Okay, fam, welcome back. So, today we're going to be going over the Bitcoin miners and some other news, as well as some historical stats about what happens when the markets dump on October 1st, which is supposed to be bullish seasonality. So, with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we should go over first. The first thing is, and again, we've already covered this briefly, but I want to cover this one more time because it is important. So the dock workers along the southern border and the kind of up to the east coast of the United States are currently striking, uh, basically as of today. And again, the reason is basically because of a contract ratification. For those of you guys that don't know how union contracts work, basically the company, the employees tell the unions what they want in terms of like compensation and retirement and stuff like that, and the union and the company or companies, depending on how many there are, will sit at a table and they'll meet and they'll negotiate the standards and come out to some kind of agreement that eventually the workers can be happy with, and they'll sign off on it, and they'll go on their new contract. So that's usually kind of how this works. But you can see this just happened today. Again, the actual strike itself took place at midnight. Based on the previous article we read. But the thing I want to point out here is this case. So a couple of things. So you can see the top scale guys here get paid $39 an hour. That's pretty good for a wage. So if I just do 39 times, let's say 160 hours, because again, most people work 40 hours a week, that's $6,000 a month. So again, that's not too shabby, times 13 pay period or 13 months per year, which is $81,000. So if these guys got only a 50% increase, they would be bumped up to $120,000 to $130,000 a year. That's pretty good. Again, that does not include overtime, so you could be pushing $150,000 to $120,000 a year. But if I were just to take these, let's say these previous numbers, 81,000 times, let's say what they're trying to get here, which is you can see the 77% over 6 years, which is a lot. I mean, it's a 6-year time frame, so I don't see any reason why that's not actually a reasonable expectation. That's roughly about, what is that, like maybe 12% per year, 13% per year. I mean, it seems like a lot, but not really. I mean, inflation's still at 3%, so you get a 10% increase every year. I mean, you're forced to work out there in the elements and stuff like that, kind of near the water. A lot of heavy, dangerous stuff going on, so I don't think it's really much of an expectation to expect something like this. This would bump these guys up to $143,000 a year. So let's do the math on this. So 62,000, let's say, so looks like, it looks like these guys do a lot of business. So 1.3 billion to 3 billion in daily imports. That is a lot of money. It's also a lot of product. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe based on the last article, it read that there's roughly about 45,000 of these people. So if I just did the math here, 62,000 times 45,000, probably going to be a pretty large number. I mean, that's $2.8 billion a year. Again, I don't know what the profit margins are for these companies, but I mean, if you spread this out over 6 years, it's a lot less. It's only about $500 million a year. I mean, look, here's what I think is going to happen. Okay, they're probably going to meet somewhere in the middle because that's usually how these contracts go. The company's willing to offer 50%. They're looking for 77%. My guess is probably going to be somewhere around like maybe 62%, which again is still a massive increase. I mean, 50% is $40,000 a year pay raise over the course of 6 years, so that's pretty good, not including OT and benefits and stuff. I think this is all going to come to a head pretty quickly. I think that both the employees and the companies, as well as the politicians, realize how bad of a situation this could become. So they're going to do whatever they can to nix it as soon as possible. I would say probably within a week or two, we'll get some kind of resolution on this. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to go over here, and this is obviously the S&P has recovered a little bit since the S&P has recovered a little bit since that crazy sell-off we saw this morning. Again, it's not really so obvious on the daily chart, but if I go down to the 15-minute chart, you guys can see the absolute bloodbath that happened this morning. So we kind of got that somewhat V-shaped recovery. It's currently testing the EMAs, but you can see this drop here from basically the previous all-time highs is actually pretty large. So roughly about 1.5%. But the stat I wanted to go over is this, okay? So what happens when we get a 1% drop on October 1st in Q4 of 2024? In the case of the S&P, it's actually not true as of currently. We still have about 45 minutes to trade. Or in the case of futures, about an hour and 45 minutes. But for the NASDAQ and the Russell 2000, it is down more than 1%. So that is actually true in some of these cases. So this is a stat here this dude figured out somehow. So the guy's name is Seth Golden. Credit goes to him for this, but we'll go over this real quick. It says, what if the SPX fell 1% on the first trading day of October? This outcome would be a bull's best friend. There have been 11 occurrences of such a decline on the first trading day of October. Each occurrence delivered a positive return by Q4's end every single time. Look at the average gain, folks. Looky, looky indeed. So you guys can see here that the percentage this thing has been down has been literally zero. 100% of the time this thing has been up 11 out of 11 times, with the roughly kind of average and median ranging somewhere around 8 to 10% on average. So let's just do a measurement to see what this would look like on the S&P, and just understand, with stocks going up by the end of the year, 8 to 10%, you can be sure that crypto is most likely going to go up too. So if I were just to do 8%, this is actually higher than our year-end target. Our year-end target's 6,000. This is at 6,200. Now, if I measure this as 10%, and again, that is kind of the average range. It doesn't necessarily have to be as high as 8 or 10%. It could be, though. We're looking at somewhere between a 6,200 to a 6,360 S&P 500. So I did just want to throw that out there for y'all. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and go over the miners. All right, so weekly time frame here. We were about to get a golden cross, didn't quite get one yet. So that kind of sucks. It is what it is. But again, there is a bright side to this, and that is that we're sitting at this macro support. Usually when we get to this level, we do have a massive bounce. It doesn't always happen immediately, but it does happen, and the gains are absolutely stupid. Again, we are going into Q4, which is the most bullish time of the year for Bitcoin. So 532% gain here on the first bounce. Second bounce was as high as 360%. And the question is, how much is this one going to be? I mean, it could be anything. It could be 200%, 300%, 1,000%. We don't know. So the buy area as of right now, 13 and a quarter. If it lasts till December, it could be potentially as much as 15, I would say. And then anywhere in between there is a good buy. And then boom, takes off to the upside. So resistance here, 18 to 20, 30 to roughly about 33. There's still massive upside here. And again, I do think the miners are going to moonshot along with Bitcoin when it starts taking off. So 33% to as much as 118%. And do keep in mind, you can also do options on these if you want to. You can do call debit spreads. You can do just basic long calls. You can do cash secured puts and covered calls if you want to. I mean, there's a lot of options here, pun intended. Okay, so this thing has kind of steeped down below the bottom of the support here. I would say probably anywhere in between this kind of, maybe the top of the support, 530 to as high as $10 is a pretty good buy area in my opinion. So $18.30 to about $21 is what we're looking at here. Again, worst case scenario, you'd be looking at as much as 298%. Best case scenario, let's just assume that this previous low here was the bottom at 638, 228% move. Again, keep in mind that does not include the previous all-time high, which the all-time high for this thing was $80 a share. And the previous all-time high for Mara was also about $80 a share. And the previous all-time high for HUD 8, which is the next one, was also about $80 a share. So do keep that in mind. Okay, so Mara, this one, or not Mara, sorry, HUD 8. This one's kind of stuck in no man's land. Again, we did get a break out of the wedge. You can see it was a pretty powerful move. I mean, it pretty much almost didn't go exactly perfectly to the target, but pretty close. Once again, the target for the falling wedge is the top of the wedge. I mean, I would say probably somewhere around maybe $7 to $9 would be the best. The asymmetrical bet kind of positioning for getting in on the dip. Again, there's no guarantees it can go back that low. But the support down here, 360 to about 880. Again, I don't think it really goes lower than kind of that $8-9 area. I kind of see that as the bottom. So 1740 to 22, we'll just say 22 and a half roughly. If you get that pullback, or if you manage to get it when it happened, 164% gain here. Mara, Riot, HUD 8, and CLSK, at least before CLSK fell off a cliff, did have some pretty good options premiums. So perhaps when that goes up, that would be a way to play it to kind of get the upside and also some passive income, since these don't actually pay dividends. Okay, so Cypher, support here 210 to 275. $5 to about $5.60, and then the swing high up here at $8. Again, there was an opportunity, a very brief point in time to buy this back in September. If you got in, great. You have made some juicy gains. Congratulations, you made about 60%. If not, well, I mean, there's always opportunities in other stocks. So roughly about 153% to as much as 270% from kind of the lows down there. If it just goes up from here, we're looking at roughly about 58% to 127% move. Okay, BTBT. This thing is, once again, kind of stuck in no man's land. When it popped off of this low here, out of this falling wedge, I mean, it hasn't come back down since. So, I mean, you can do whatever you want to with this one. Personally, I wouldn't touch it unless I was looking for basically a bull market peak here, which again is roughly about a 10-11x from the current price, $33 all-time high for BTBT in the last cycle. So support down here, roughly about $163 to $2, and then $4.15 to about $5 at that kind of resistance top up there. Would be about as much as 134% move. Now, if I were just to be ridiculous about this and say, okay, this thing could eventually go to $33, if I just measure it from right around where the current price is, you guys can see how stupid this would be, but it is possible. About a 900% gain here. And again, I mean, you got to have some stones down there, if you know what I mean. Some balls of steel, so to speak, to be able to hold all the way up to 33 and not panic sell, because a lot of people will see their cryptocurrencies, they will see their cryptocurrencies moonshotting, and they will probably freak out and sell early just to lock in profits before the actual peak takes place. Okay, so BITF, this thing's sitting on support. Again, that macro trend line down there is kind of holding us up. So support here, roughly about $2 to $2.40. And then you have $3 to about $3.50, and then $4 down there at that, or at the top at that swing high up there. So 83% move and then 98% respectively. Now the last one, which we do have massive call debit spread positions on, and I do mean massive. I'm not kidding when I say this. So we, as of right now, have 126 total on CLSK, and we're expecting to make roughly about $30,000 to $35,000 on this position, because again, if I go back in time here, you guys can see that when did CLSK pop off to the moon? October to December, January of the halving year. And it went as high as $41. Okay, we are in the halving year in October. So this thing should start flying off to the moon anytime. And again, it did just get back to $24 when the spot Bitcoin ETFs got approved. But of course, that's not the true bull run. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have much more to say about that. And again, if I go back to Bitcoin, when did Bitcoin go to the moon? If I look at Bitcoin, you guys can see this thing started pushing towards all-time highs. It broke out from all-time highs right around October to December of the halving year. So I mean, if history is any indication, this is what should happen. This is what should happen with the Bitcoin miners over the course of the next 3 months. All right, so CLSK here, we have unfortunately gotten down below this trend line. However, I can readjust this because, again, this is trading. This is kind of how it works sometimes. If I go back in time here, you guys can see that this trend line can be readjusted. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but nothing in trading ever is perfect. So it retested back here, and then we're currently retesting here. I would definitely like to see a bounce off of this, that's for sure. Again, the daily time frame, we did get an oversold signal. You can actually see, as of right now, there is also some kind of bullish divergence forming right here. So we have finally, we have higher lows on the MACD and the RSI, and we have lower lows on CLSK, which in theory should create a bullish reversal, also known as bullish divergence, which means the price should go up. And we did just have oversold signal back here on September 24th. So, yeah, theoretically, the price should be going up here pretty quick. How quick exactly, I don't know. But I think it's just a matter of days or weeks at this point. Okay, so buy zone kind of down here between 890 to, I'd say, potentially as high as 1360. Once it gets past this 1360, I'm expecting this thing to start blasting off to the moon. So if I just measure it kind of in between, and we'll say, maybe $10 would be kind of the average here, 38%. And again, the previous resistance up here at 2120 to about 2380. Potentially as much as 108% to 136%, and then the swing high at $25 is a 145% move. So bullish seasonality is here. Looks like we got our minus 1% day on the indices on October 1st, which again has led to a 100% bullish move over the next 3 months. Whether the day actually ends down 1% or not remains to be seen. It's kind of a mixed bag at this point, but in my mind, if any of these are down more than 1%, that qualifies as that part of that bullish metric that we looked at. I mean, markets are very mixed, but you guys got to understand there's different sectors in each of these markets, so different weightings, all that kind of stuff. So it's not actually, they're not all going to move in perfect percentages. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.